Hi, Liz.
How are you?
So I just wanted to start this off with getting your side or your story on when your grief journey started. Like,
Oh God. So personally, I've been through multiple journeys. I feel so I guess like my first like realization of it, my mom unfortunately passed when I was like 12. I mean, I grew up in my aunt's house. Like there's a whole other story around that. But I feel like I ultimately was too young to really deal with any of that appropriately. But yeah, probably like when I was 12, and my mom passed, she had unfortunately contracted HIV after she had my sister and I. And she just that was before like many of the reliable retrovirals were available. I mean, the fact that I think she survived as long as she did was pretty outstanding for the mid to late 90s. But yeah, so I mean, I hadn't seen her in a while. I hadn't even heard from her officially in a while. Although not for lack of her trying, because apparently like she had written to us and sent things. And my aunt, who I lived with, kind of tried to keep it away from us, which, I definitely resented her for later, because I was like, you could have like I don't know, like I don't know if it was just like she felt like we couldn't handle it or what. But so like to all of a sudden not hear from my mother, like, because we moved from Long Island when I was 9, and that was the last time I saw her. So to have not heard from her in like 3 years, and then it's like, oh well, I'm dying.
yeah,
It was a lot.
and at
And
12, that's
and then
like that's a
yeah,
lot for a 12-year-old.
yeah, well, and then like what I feel like really rough was how the like, I mean, it's like I think mentally I knew she was calling because she was on her deathbed, but like you don't think of that when you're 12,
Yeah,
because my mother had me when she was really young. She wasn't even 30 yet. So I've outlived, but by the time that I turned 30, I had officially outlived how long my mom had lived.
yeah.
um so the way that my aunt decided to officially break the news that she died was she took us to a therapist
Oh,
and did that. And it's like, I mean, in some ways it's like I know that sometimes
wait,
that
that's how you
that's
found out that she died, because she took you to a therapist and said, "Oh, their mom died. Talk to them."
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's I've read like some, I don't know, I guess since I've seen some thoughts about like how that might be a safer space to do it. But I was like, that just it just seemed so like sterile.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so yeah, like there was, like I would say that really, that first like real, experience was riddled with also like a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, because I was like, dude, like I wasn't allowed to really process it. You let other people into the process
Right.
because you felt like they needed to be involved. And I can understand, the thought, but and again, like I understood why in a way she had tried to like shield us from my mother, because she had like a lot of problems, and she was, I mean, like thinking about it, it's like, yeah, you probably don't want, somebody who's, with a new guy every 2 seconds. It's like I understood some of the reasons but at the end of the day, it was like, to have not had that contact, and then the last contact, the first and last contact I had with her was just before she died. It was like, what?
Yeah, that's a lot of heavy adult things for someone who's not an adult.
Yeah. So, and I mean, my sister was 10, I guess. Yeah, she was about 10 when this happened too. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's, I mean, like, I think over the years, I kind of processed it and I reasoned myself out of a lot of stuff. But it was probably one of the more like difficult things that I dealt with at that time. Like, and I mean, like, aside from all the other crap that happened.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think. I mean, if I think about it, like, it's something that, I feel like was a pivotal point, because like up until that point, like, I felt like things were kind of, stable. I don't know. I mean, like, my mom had all of a sudden decided to, become like a Jehovah's Witness or something. And, she kind of went like, you know how like some people, when they've been like an addict and then all of a sudden they swing the complete other way, like the pendulum swings the opposite end of the spectrum, and all of a sudden, like, oh, we no Christmas, no birthdays, no none of this, like, it's like no you know chance to actually like separate, like, to like fully break from the way that we used to be. It was just like one day we were one way, and then the next way it was, that next day it was something else.
Right.
um so yeah. um
So how did that situation like change how you saw things? I mean, you're 12 years old, so you're still like learning. But as an adult
Mhm.
now looking back, um, how did that change you? Good
I
or
mean, like,
good or bad?
I mean, I feel like it kind of made me, I mean, because again, like, there was a lot of resentment within that whole situation. Like, I was pissed that I had to find out the way that I did. I was pissed about like not having contact with her until just before she died. It kind of, if anything, it made me like a very angry person. You know, from I mean, and then like the ages of like 14 and 15 were very difficult for me, and for more than one reason, but I was very self-destructive.
Mm-hmm.
Um I had attempted suicide multiple times. Um, you know, like, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you never succeeded.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, obviously looking back, it's like, yeah, I suppose I'm happy too, but not trying to be super sarcastic about it, but it's like, yeah, I guess I'm happy I didn't succeed.
Yeah.
um yeah, like, I struggled with a lot of things. If I don't know if I can necessarily 100% blame that whole situation, but it certainly didn't help
Right.
with anger and how to properly manage things. I had been, before that point, I had been, sort of forced to, or not forced, but like it was required that I see a therapist, partially because mainly because of the way that my separation from my mother had happened. We were unfortunately sexually abused. So DIFUS took us away, and or whatever. I mean, I don't know what they were called back then. Um, but like, there was a lot of things, that they thought like, oh, well, because she's young and she's had this trauma, she's going to need therapy, and she's going to need to be in, like, I was put in a special education class. I don't know what the reasoning was, but like, as far as I understood, there was no major, like, I had no major learning disabilities, but I had to, I was put in that class because of what had happened. And, maybe I had behavioral issues. I mean, again, I don't know. I was 4, 5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so it's like there was a lot of things that like people did because they thought they were the right thing to do. And I was never like formally allowed to like process what happened, because it was like, oh, well, this happened to you, so we need to do this, this, and that to help you process. It's like I wasn't allowed to organically process anything.
Right.
Um, so and I feel like as an adult, it's still I still struggle with a lot of that. I still struggle with how to fully regulate, um, and like, cause I'll like hold things in, hold things in, hold things in. And then it all of a sudden, like, I have, like I get frustrated with, a situation that's been allowed to happen that I didn't like, and finally I just like freaking, blurt out, and then people get real pissed because they're like, oh, why? Well,
Yeah.
you know. Um, so yeah, it's, I don't know, like I think I tried to seek out counseling. I tried to seek out counseling even after I had Stella, because my postpartum depression was awful. Like I went to back to work way too soon. I went back to work after 5.5 weeks. Um, and I wasn't really ready, but it was the choice of either going back to work and maintaining my full salary, or continuing to take time off. Not that, like, again, I could have taken the time off, like I could have taken FMLA or whatever, but it would have meant me taking a 35% salary cut. And that wasn't a financial option for us.
Right.
um, so, like I remember like trying to seek out like help, and I had, a friend of mine had recommended somebody, and this lady she was not the most helpful person. It all kind of like was like, oh, well, don't you feel that in a way that all this is because of you? Like, this is your fault, and like, I mean, like, that wasn't necessarily what she said, but that's definitely how it came across.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think I had even like brought my husband, because at the time I was like, I felt like we were not like jiving very well. And to a point, like, I guess maybe that is something that I feel we still struggle with. Um, because as hard as I find it to communicate, I feel like he's even worse as far as that goes. He just like puts up with stuff, gets angry, and lets it all out, you know. So yeah, it it's not good.
Have you had to deal with grief as an adult?
Yeah, my uncle,
Oh yeah,
um,
your uncle. Yeah.
yeah, when my uncle passed, and it's like we were prepared for it, like we knew the eventuality of it, but the fact that it happened, um, and then the dynamic that, I feel like it changed my family dynamic ever since. Like,
Right.
I feel like there used to be closeness, there used to be, some form of like, oh, hey, yeah, we always made a point to like try to see each other and stuff. Like people got busy, but there was always that, like outreach. Um, and ever since he passed, like, people have kind of gone to their corners, and like, the people, the family that's in Long Island kind of stays there. My adoptive mother has developed like major, whew, like to the point, like she developed, like I guess I could say like she started having some sort of midlife crisis, and acting like she was like 20 again, and apparently staying up all night, and the rumor is that she has been using something. And
So your uncle's death kind of, you lost him, which is grieving in its own, but then you're kind of grieving what your family used to be.
yeah,
So it's kind of like two hits in one,
yeah,
in a way.
yeah. And then, it's like it's like I always struggle because like my mother-in-law like feels like, oh, well, every holiday it's spent with them. And it's like, there's not really much consideration for whether or not like I want to spend the holiday with my family. At least early on, there was never any consideration for that. It was always, I felt like there was always the assumption that I was going to spend it with, Todd and I were going to spend it with their family.
Right.
And now it's like, well, now it's almost like pointless to try to spend it with my family because, I've cut off my mother, or my adoptive mother, because I don't want Stella exposed to that. And it's like I see my dad. We try to make a point to like see him for his birthday and I think for Father's Day and stuff like that. But I haven't seen my grandfather in a few years. Like I don't know if, what is it? No, I think he came down because we invited people over. It was December of 2019. We had a small celebration for Stella's birthday, and at our house, and they came down. And that I think was the last time like I officially saw him, because then everything shut down for COVID. And
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, COVID. Well, there's no secret that COVID's definitely like hurt a lot of dynamics.
Yeah.
But when things were already strained to begin with, it certainly did not make it better. So
Right.
yeah.
As a kid, dealing with grief is quite different than an adult dealing with grief. So did you learn anything that was helpful to you during grieving for your uncle versus grieving for your mother when you were only 12?
I honestly don't know. I mean, the unfortunate thing of when I lost my uncle, like, by that point I was old enough to drink. And you eventually, like, I think if anything, like I learned a behavior that was not good.
Right.
Not that I would like, it's not like I would like regularly like, get like completely plastered. But it's like you kind of learn to hide the pain by drinking,
Right.
or eating, or something. It wasn't something that was healthy. And that's like, I guess like, that's ultimately why I've had to make other decisions, because it's like I started seeing that, whenever things would get really bad, I would drink more, again, not to the point where it's like, oh my God, like I would spend 90% of the week like completely out of my mind, but I would have more than I probably should in a week.
Right.
So
And that's
that's
like
where
that's a appropriate's not the right word, but it's like a appropriate quotation marks like response.
yeah. Oh no, I mean, and
Like,
it's
you know what I
not, I
mean?
mean, it's fairly common. There's people
Yeah.
who,
Common. That's
they're
the word, not appropriate.
yeah.
Common.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I knew where you were getting at. I mean, it's not unheard of to hear that all of a sudden people develop like, eating disorders or alcohol abuse issues or drug abuse issues because of shit that's gone on in their lives that they haven't been able to appropriately deal with.
I mean, I know when my sister passed, none of us ate for like a week. We lived off of coffee, and that's pretty much it. Because everyone was like just literally sick to their stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought of eating.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, like, I even think like, to a point, like, so like, yeah, when, I was able to get to 30, now it's like when like my husband just turned 40 this year. And it's like all that, like one thing that was on my mind was I was like, Tommy didn't get to have that birthday. Like we ended
Right.
up having some sort of like, I think my aunt threw like a 39th birthday for him. Um, so that he was able to still attend and stuff. Um, but then after he passed, she had a party for him. I mean, it was like, it's hard to call it a party because, I mean, it was sort of like a celebration of life, I guess, if anything. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously oh my gosh, like his funeral was 3 days long. Like it was, and I was there the entire time. I went to every single wake. I went to the funeral. I went to the repast, like everything. Um, like, he was, it was the first, I mean, yeah, it was just like, I mean, 3 days of living
That's
in,
emotionally draining
yeah, yeah.
in
Um,
every aspect.
mhm, yeah. And it's like I stayed with family, during that time because it's like it was up in Long Island and I wasn't driving back and forth to Long Island, from
Mm.
Jersey. I mean, I lived in this area at the time. No.
Yeah.
um yeah, it was just like, I remember coming home and just being like, well, what the hell do I do now? Like, um, so it's but yeah, like we had a celebration of life for him later that year. Um, and my, it's like 40 this year. And it's like initially I was like, oh yeah, 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 we'll try to have a thing for him. And I legitimately did want to, and then it just never happened. And I was like, I don't know if I was less gung-ho about it than I should have been, because like I had this thought in my head of like, I have family members who didn't get to see that age. I mean, and there's
Right.
also, again, there's also the, overarching theme of like, hey, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and is it the most responsible thing to do? I
Yeah.
even felt it like holding Stella's birthday party a couple weeks back. I was like, dang, like, I mean, again, we were all fairly responsible there. Actually, a good amount of people wore masks in there. So, but I was like, still like, oof, and where we're at now.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that aspect because my birthday was last week also, and turning 35 was, you know, even though I'm like still in denial that I'm in my 30s and like 35, oh my God, I'm 35. But it it made me more sad knowing like my sister's never going to be able to be 35. She'll forever
Yeah,
be 30 years old.
yeah,
And that's a hard pill to swallow.
it is like like you think about it, and it's like every, these people that you know they're always going to be that age.
Yeah.
you know you know it's like I see people post like, oh, this is, or like my mother-in-law will even like still recognize her parents' birthdays. And I mean, they were fortunate enough to be able to live full lives, but she like still recognizes, oh, this coming February is daddy's 100th birthday. And I'm like, I mean, I it's like, it's a nice sentiment, but then you like, when you think about like the people who didn't get to live full lives, and they you're like you think about like, oh, this would have been their 35th, this would have been their 40th, it's like you can't help but think of like, well, what person would they be this year?
Right.
you know um yeah, and that's that I think is what's the worst part of it. It's like it's not even really about the age, like it is, but it's not. It's about like who you would have been able, who you would have had the privilege to meet that year.
I know with
So,
my sister, you know, she had just turned 30 5 days prior passing, and she was so like excited for this year because she was, you know, she was gonna have a positive attitude. She was gonna start eating better and putting more effort into, you know, a business that she was looking into. She was going to apply new things at work. So in a way, you're also grieving what she can't have anymore, or will never be able to do or accomplish. And I feel like grief just has so many layers, and sometimes people just see the first layer, grieving the person's passing, but there's so much more depth involved. And like unless you've been there and dealing with it or dealt with it, like you just don't really think about other things involving it.
Yeah. Yep.
There's anything that you could say to, you know, the people who have passed, like what would you want them to know, or what what would you want them to know?
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, like for my mom, I'd probably at the very least like properly thank her for what she did do, that I either didn't know about, or you know, what, you know, the efforts that she did make. Because it's like I remember being, you know, I remember when she called at first, I didn't want to talk to her because I was angry that I hadn't heard from her.
Right.
And
I'm
you know,
sorry to make
later
you
on,
cry.
no, it's okay. Part of it is also just the dry air
Okay.
as well. Like, but like I I mean, I would probably at the very least thank her for the efforts that she did make. Because while I was angry that there wasn't more, you know, as an adult, obviously I realized that there was only so much she was able to do and so much she was allowed to do.
Right.
You know, partially, you know, again, because of my aunt keeping, you know, kind of trying to bar us from her. So, and then my uncle, I mean, like, it's funny, like, Tommy was only 11 years older than me. I can't remember. Yeah, I guess I was about 27. Yeah. Cause it's like I met Todd. I'm trying to do the math in my head and I was like, yeah, I did. You know, I was just about 25 when I met Todd, and then Tommy passed about 2 years later. And he, and like for him, it's like you know, I don't know. It's like, you know, like he was always like this, like, you know, older brother in a sense, more than an uncle, because he was only like 10, 11 years older than me.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, like I thank him for what he, you know, what he did do, you know, for the part that he played in our lives growing up. Um, you know, and you know, there would be like little snarky statements that I would make to him sometimes, like almost would like cross the line. like there was like, because like for instance, like, and I think, this is something that like I'm like ashamed to admit, but it happened, and I was like, wow, that, thinking about it now, I was like, damn, that was way out of line. But at the time, I don't even know why I said it, but like I remember because he was working in the city during September 11th. He's working on elevators in the city. So, that was back when cell phone service was shoddy to begin with. We didn't hear from him for like almost 2 days, and we weren't sure like what was going on, whether or not he had gotten impacted or what. I mean, theoretically, he did get impacted because, while there are genetic markers in my family for the type of cancer he had, we feel, there's a lot of like thoughts of like, his exposure during that time, like really, accelerated that, and really exacerbated any impact he had from it. Um, so I mean, I remember we had gotten into we were like having some sort of like banter, or I don't know, we were saying some, not so nice things to each other. But it's like, how like you can kind of get into, you're kind of exchanging not so nice words. Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, some families do this, it's like they'll be saying some not so nice things, but
Yeah.
then like you kind of just like laugh it off, and it's like, oh, haha. Um, like I crossed the line. Like I think I had said like, well, I kind of wish that, you hadn't come home after September 11th or so. Yeah, it's like super cringe. Like you're like, I was like, it's like, I remember he like immediately got like, what, like WTF, Liz, and like I don't even remember because I was in high school. Yeah, I was in high school when September 11th happened. So maybe this was like a year or two later, and I was in college. And I think what sparked the arguments, the not so nice things we were saying to each other, is because I was mad about him like kind of ghosting me for a while. He had used like my eBay account to list some stuff, and I was like really pissed at him because he ghosted people for a while. And then I was like, well, where's this shit? Like, the customers bought the stuff, and you need to ship it out, and I don't know where it is. I can't ship it myself if I know where it is.
Right.
And yeah, because like he did that. He kind of like, he went through a period of time where he was just straight up like, he was living with my parents, and he just like straight up like ghosted us for a month, two, and that was what happened. And yeah, I mean, I do remember that like part of the reason why the conversation was so bad was because I was mad at him for what he did, and at the time it mattered to me. It doesn't matter now, but
Yeah.
um, you know, like I remember I said that, and I was like, I think if I had the opportunity to, to say to him like, hey, like, I said that out of really horrible, misplaced anger. Um, because it's like you don't realize like how much of a cornerstone somebody is for a family dynamic until after they're not there
Yeah.
anymore. Um, yeah. So it's just kind of wild,
Yeah.
but
Lots of heavy stuff.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because it's like I even think about like how things changed, for his family, and I mean, well, I'm sure it's not ideal. Like, he now has a granddaughter, and it's, like I remember being taken aback at first because my I guess like she's my second cousin. Like her mother is my cousin. But so this little girl is my second cousin. And like I remember being taken aback at first when I found out that my cousin was pregnant, because like she was only like 21. I was like, I remember like almost wanting to say something, but I think I didn't, because I realized how badly it could come across. Like I had just had Stella at the time, um, and or I was almost pregnant, because I think she announced she was pregnant. No, oh no, because like she had her, yeah, I think we found out that she was pregnant right around the time that I had Stella, because then she had her daughter the following September. Stella and her are only like 9 months apart. Um and like but like yeah, I mean, like if I had had the opportunity to say anything to him, it's be like, you don't realize the change, the impact that you had. And Yeah, like I just, it's like I wish that he could see some of the stuff that he, unfortunately is unable to.
Yeah.
So, but but yeah.
Well, Liz, thank you so much for being so open and honest. And I know we've had like our own private conversations about things like this before. Um, but I just want to thank you for allowing others to hear your story.
Of course.
And yeah, if there's anything else you want to add before we sign off, or
Not too much. I mean, I guess it's like, I mean, and obviously, from my personal, way, like from how I handle things, it's I mean, I guess this is part of the reason why I throw myself into my workouts so much, because again, it's like, hey, at least it's a slightly healthier thing to
yeah,
deal, to help deal, to help cope. But it's still not the same as really talking and getting it out. But that's where I struggle the most, is trying to find somebody that I jive with well enough, that's like actually a professional and can help, and won't just like, like I don't know, like I question a lot of like how many professionals I've seen that like kind of just hit the easy button. They're like, oh, well, here are these antidepressants, or here are these. I was like, I don't want to take that,
yeah,
because I've got a billion different other things that I want to do. And, if an antidepressant is going to either make me more depressed or make me lethargic, that's not going
yeah,
to help. Yeah, like, so, um, I mean, for those that, I are, for those that have been fortunate enough to find a person that, a professional that can really help them and that they jive with, like, really utilize that. I mean, there's all sorts of things that make all of that much more difficult, because now it's like, oh, well, this is technically, you need health insurance now to cover, to talk to somebody. I was like, what?
yeah,
um, so that's a whole other conversation though.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, for those that are lucky enough to have somebody that they're able to, really talk to, and, that they trust,
Yeah,
like, yeah, don't try your damnedest not to change that. Because, in some way I wish I had, like, I mean, obviously I'm very fortunate that I have like fantastic friends. But there's sometimes it's like, you're like, not everything can be just discussed openly with friends. Like, you shouldn't, like, it's one thing to discuss, but then, like, you're still left with what the hell you're going to do about it. And at the
Right.
end of the day, it's you who has to figure that out. Um, so, yeah. I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't even know like where I was going with this, but I mean, like, I
That
guess it makes
happens.
sense. So,
That happens.
yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah, no, and thank you for putting
You
this
know,
together and stuff. I think it's
you
an awesome project.
like if I'm around if you ever need anybody.
Yeah, no, and same. You know where I am.
All
So,
right. We'll
all
talk
right.
soon.
Yes. Talk to you guys soon. Give
All right.
everybody at home a hug.
I will.
Yeah. All right. Bye,
Bye,
guys.
Liz.